Hello again and welcome to another vlogcast with SIA Austria. We are going to be looking again at some skiers, giving you some ideas and thoughts that might help. It may, when you look at the skiers, be similar as to how you ski. What's the theme of the day?
I think we're going to go look at a few older guys. Not old, not being ageist at all, but just a couple of older guys in their late 30s, early 40s, 50s, that kind of thing. Looking at a long performance turn and just talk to Paul about what he did with the guys and how he managed to achieve a little bit more performance out of his team.
Yeah, well, these guys are in their 50s here, and indeed one of them must be 70 years older.
Yeah, this guy's Jim, and he was particularly lacked crazy amount of mobility.
Yeah, had
didn't really move on. Was a good skier.
Yeah,
built up a good motor pattern that worked for him.
Yeah.
His long turns weren't particularly great, but he really lacked some mobility.
In fairness as well, I see that a lot with older people as well. Their confidence in long turns go, and they much prefer just doing short turns where they feel more safer. I mean, when you look at the comparison actually, and you watch the young racer go down here who was skiing with us as well, and how she moves on the ski, you quickly see what we're looking for our level 2. And then you compare the first two. And obviously it's the first just day, so we don't expect anything better than that.
This is Teki, a local Argentinian.
And
yeah.
And there's Gerhard there. So he's at, I think it was his 70th birthday on this course, was it not?
I think he's 69 on this course, but I think he's 71 now, Gerhard, or 72.
And he's PSIA instructor as well. And once again, you can see some positive things. It brings me on to the...
But Gerhard, you said he's a PSI level 2 skier, but he's not a full-time instructor. So it's not his profession. He doesn't spend seasons on snow. It's actually more of a hobby. He's looking to do it more often now he's coming into retirement. As more of a kind of a... We
look again at another one of the group here is Don. And again, we can start to pick up. I mean, this is obviously much more difficult, the terrain. In Argentina, actually, it's quite challenging terrain, isn't it? It's a really good place to ski in San Carlos de Bariloche and Cerro Catedral. Yeah, it's got sort of that varied terrain, quite steep runs in general, and a lot of moguls.
Yeah, I like the structure more or less when we're over there, being technical on the groomers in the morning, on the piste de terrain, and then in the afternoon, let's take that technique that we've developed in the morning and let's go play with it on the variable terrain and search for the same accuracy. And it's got so much access to those kind of more chopped up runs, a lot of steeps, like you say, steeps over. It's just insane terrain to go out and ski. It's an amazing place.
Well, let's start and have an idea of one thing that we find very important within people in my generation, if you like, is that there is always the challenge of agility, mobility, coordination, stability. And we see it here where we're sort of pushing, and Don loves, in fairness, he's done endless amount of bumps, clinics, and he loves to get out into the bumps. So when we look at how he moves, we can see the issues, or I can see very quickly before. Let's have a look. Slow this down a bit. When I stop it here, straight away I can quickly see that I wanted to have a close look at what was going on in his ankle joint off the hill. I needed to have a look at his mechanics because clearly either the equipment was creating issues or he certainly had issues where at this stage here, there is a complete lack of knee rotation, which means that his tibia, the shin bone, and his big femur at the top there, you can see the two of them are just in a straight line. And that there means all the time his outside ski, he's going to find it difficult to edge that ski and get any type of grip, which is always then going to place his weight back to the inside. Would you agree with that, Jamie?
Kind of known, after you looked at Don's ankle and stuff like that, once we took the boots off and we established that there was a restriction of mobility within that joint, I can agree, but at the same time, if this skier's come to me and this is the movement pattern and the motor pattern that I'm seeing on the first day, I'm thinking, is he going subconsciously maybe defensive, that he's coming to that
like a bracing
control
action.
phase? Yeah, is he just braking by pushing that outside ski out as a bit of an anchor to slow himself down, as opposed to arcing the ski that little bit more?
And
so
we
you've gotta
know
have
that
those,
if somebody pushes
thoughts.
on a ski, then there's Newton's third law will tell us there's going to be an
there's a
opposite
resultant
reaction,
force, and it's going to push them inside.
they tend to fall inside these people as well. So as looking at Don here, and obviously there was a great big concern straight away that I needed to have some sort of off-hill testing. I needed to have a look. I needed to have a bit of history from injury point of view as well. Was the issues there, and I also needed to see what his boots are doing, because that's going to be really important as well. And as I say, this terrain is not exactly easy terrain. So in this case, we're pushing the boundaries a little bit. But here, watching him move now a little bit on smoother terrain gives us an idea of where his steering's coming from. And clearly how he has his body discipline. These were all things, and you can see there's a black run actually. So once again, it's a steeper run. As he progresses, one thing that we can do with people, if you don't have much time with them, is sometimes just address stance issues. If somebody finds it difficult to hold their stance together, and obviously, generally, if we want to be better balanced, we increase our base of support. We grow it and get wider and wider. But in skiing, of course, we're not wanting necessarily to be balanced. We're wanting the ability to topple in, and a wide stance for somebody who lacks mobility, for example, can be very inhibiting. So in other words, when you see people carving sometimes, it is obviously well known to ski instructors that a narrow stance is easier to turn quickly and rotate, but a wider stance can be a way of cheating to get more edge tilt, for example.
Yeah, but I think if you again, it's one to do with your own biomechanics, how your body's set up as to how wide your stance would be. For me, it's always whether you
exactly. Can somebody achieve a wide stance and carve if their hips are tight?
Yeah, because if you go too wide with the stance, you start to move your center of mass inside the turn. You're going to end up standing on the inside scheme. We're always looking for the pressure, or most of the pressure grip, to be under the outside. I think with Don, it was a quick fix. Always, if you can get him to work with that narrower stance, is as soon as you bring the feet underneath the body, it naturally creates more flexion. So we're naturally seeing him in just a nicer, more athletic, dynamic stance, which is allowing him then to have more access to steering from the correct joints, because he's not bracing anymore, which is locking that femur up inside the hip socket.
And you can't, the issue is you have to be disciplined as a coach and not address everything at once. At this point in the turn, because both Jamie and I favour heavily fore and aft balance, we can clearly see the issue here is he is too far forward at this point in the turn, and everything is piling over in this direction onto the tip of the ski and creating a washout to the tail. We know that. But you can't do everything at once.
Yeah, the way I like to structure my lessons is I generally stick to one movement for a full day at least, and just do it in many different ways, whether it be do a drill, an exercise, or just simply have a focus and try and speak about that focus in many different ways, but allow mass practice. And I think that's gets missed out a little bit in this sport, because as a recreational ski teacher, you might just have a guest for an hour, and you've got to give them as much as possible within an hour, where it's obviously with us, we have the guys for 6 weeks where you can play about with things for
so it would be
longer period.
From my side, from a coaching principle, if Jamie had said, look, Don, we just want you to go down and just see if you can keep your stance narrower under your feet, whatever analogy you give him, you've got a €500 note between your thighs and whatever, you can say what you want, because at this stage, if he starts coming down and you see him do this, there's that itching sensation coaching to go, oh, and now I want you to not go so far forward, and then I want you to balance it. No, keep it basically
simple. You could go, okay, he's got success, or more success in his longs now with his stance. You can obviously continue down that path, but you could also go, okay, could he have the same success in his short radius turns because his stance was way too wide? He was bracing in the shorts. Okay, he's got success there. Can he do the same in a bit of variable terrain? Oh, he's got success there. Can he do the same in bumps? You know, we're going to get all, just keeping it simple, still focus about the stance, but use the snowpack as a teaching method, or use the turn shape as a teaching method as well. Just keeping it simple then.
Absolutely. So by sometimes just looking at one of the body management skills, there's no need to pile in with extra stuff. When you've got a course that lasts 6 weeks, you really want to give somebody a chance to get into a late practice phase where they feel like, yeah, I've got that stance, I feel comfortable in that stance, and whether it be on steeper terrain or easy or slightly bumpy, I'm able to maintain that stance. Now you would say it's the next step comes in and you introduce something new.
Yeah, I think whenever you introduce something new, so introducing, the stance, narrowing to Don there, it probably would have felt like shit to start off with because it's new. It goes against his natural motor pattern or his natural stance. So he's probably in a little bit of disagreement with you and not quite trusting you as a coach just yet until he really starts to feel the benefit of what that stance is doing for him and allowing him to become a more performance dynamic style skier, allowing him to access more terrain, having more success and feeling more comfortable in that terrain. Then he's going to trust you as a coach, and then you can take it to the next step.
Yeah, so when we address ankle flexibility, there's many different ways to do it. And, one of the ways is using some of the classics like pistol archetype, the idea of having somebody understand how much range of dorsiflexion, plantarflexion do they have? How much is needed? Because although when you look at it from a medical point of view, you might say you want somebody to have the ability to have 20 or 30 degrees of dorsiflexion. The question is in the boot, there's a ramp angle in the boot. And we'll talk about this when we start talking more.
Just for, I'm very much to make it in layman's terms. I know it might sound like quite a simple thing to work out, but what's a ramp angle?
Yeah, well, in all the shoes that we wear, or most shoes, unless you are somebody who tends to go around in bare feet or uses barefoot shoes, I have for a long time been an advocate of barefoot shoes. But equally, I recognize that sometimes I can't always wear these shoes, which are basically allowing my arches of my feet to actively be used correctly and work. I understand that sometimes we have this ramp angle where the heel can be a little bit higher, if you like, than the ball of your foot. And indeed in some shoes, so I give
like
you
on your Friday, Saturday night around the town with the heels on. Is that what you're talking about?
I am talking about my cross-dressing.
The fat air bubbles on the back of Nikes, what we're talking.
Well, let's have a look at a video here of an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about ramp angle. So here, when I'm lifting in an Olympic lift here, what we see is the shoe has a very big ramp angle, which is this here. In fact, it's about 24 millimeters so in other words, the heel is sitting far higher than the front of my foot. And you might say, well, why is that? Because, I'm an advocate mostly of barefoot shoe, but sometimes when we start lifting heavy weights, and especially in an overhead archetype like this, where you're squatting and your arm's going to be overhead as well, it's going to be very important to have a relatively upright spine. And that means that because I am not the most flexible person, I know that by going a bit toe out in my squat and also having a ramp angle, I can cheat the system and give myself a bit of an advantage. And ski boots are set up to create a slight advantage to the system. So you are able to, even when you are restricted in your ability to move your ankles in certain planes, we can adjust the ramp angle to help that. And normally I would say if somebody has sort of 10 degrees of dorsiflexion, which is probably what you would see in the gait cycle when we walk, etc., run, then that would be sufficient. Now, Don had, I think, 0. So
Do you know when you ask those questions and you're hoping for a short answer? You don't really get that with Paul, do you? It's
if we look at me testing Jamie's dorsiflexion here, here I'm doing a passive test. And we can clearly see at this stage that he has shitloads of movement. Okay, he's very flexible. In fact, it's one of the things probably which makes it even more like one of his things in skiing, where he has to be careful he's not overflexed.
if you just appreciate Paul's guns in that picture as well, they're also looking pretty good. Clearly working out in the summertime there.
Exactly. So that would be tackling the importance of flexion. When we went through a few little tests with Don off the hill, it became evident because he told me a story about how his brother had actually had operations on both ankles, because it seemed to run in the family where they had no ability to dorsiflex. And furthermore, when I then went on to test his ability to use his big toe, that was also completely dead. Now, if we were still living in the ages where we had to run after animals and things, Don would be dead by now, because he wouldn't be to run after the animals, because we need that big toe for a lot of reasons. And in skiing as well, we need access to that big toe. So this obviously fired up some red flags and made me think that we needed to address some things off the hill. Yep. And I think both of us agree, because when we have our clinics and people here doing camps, we always take them into the gym to look at them, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think with the older people, slightly older people, a lot of the times it can be a mobility issue that's, if you're not able to do it off the mountain, you're not going to be able to do it on the mountain. And you generally find that a little bit with the older people that, they're a little bit more restricted. They've got some impingements, some blocking movements in certain areas because of, because of sitting down. Office life creates a shortening of things. So when you take them off the hill and get them mobile in the gym or in their homes, you don't need to go to a gym to get mobile.
Yeah. And why is it important? Because if we look at Gunny here skiing, the first absorption point in the human body is going to be the ankle. So here's Gunny, he's must be
54.
5, yeah.
55 this year.
That's a 193 or 4 ski?
I think it's a 193, 30 meter radius atomic World Cup GS, yeah.
Okay. So we see in his movement, basically, the ability for him to absorb. And that first absorption happens through the ankles.
But we also know as well, if the motor pattern's established early on, like with Gunny, he started skiing. He's not actually from a ski resort region in Austria, but he's moved to Capron, Austria, maybe 17 years ago. If that motor pattern's established early on, like with Pla, one of the guys who's a phenomenal skier, he's as stiff as a board when you take him into the gym, though. He's literally got, no movement within that
Which
joint.
we always say to our clients, just because you're going to fail a lot of the tests that we do with hips, shoulders, knees, etc., it doesn't mean you're a bad skier, because some of the best in the world are terrible at some of these tests of mobility. And that's why you've got to be really cautious about mobility and stability, which are not the same thing. And on top of that, when we talk about mobility, often too much movement is a big problem. I.e., when somebody is like one of these yogas and they can sort
Let's
of
not disrespect yogas, yeah.
They can do huge like splits, and they can
people who are hypermobile. We're not talking flexible, we're talking
hypermobile.
hypermobile, but there's no end range where they're too flexible, so they don't have the ability to create torque or tension within their body. Is that right?
Absolutely. They fail to get torque. You watch them go into a squat and they virtually put their backside on the ground, but it's just like all floppy, and there's no tension or torque there. Whereas,
why would that be a problem when it comes to skiing then?
Well, if somebody cannot have that productive application of force, this is strength, because they are loose and hanging off the tissues and hanging off the joints, as opposed to screwing them into the ground or using them correctly, then that is going to be a major issue for skiing and for any sport. When we teach people, here we're talking about absorption of the ankle with Gunther, for example. is when we teach people to jump, one of the things that we see is missing is the opposite. It's plantar flexion. So the ability to plantar flex, which is like pointing your toes down, which you should be to do when you run, for example. This is the absorption phase of landing. People find that very difficult. They land and they collapse in with the knees and have this valgus look to them. And then you will see similar problems on the hill as well. So we do lots of things to attempt to get people to jump and their jumping mechanics better, especially now that we are all at home. And probably there's a lot of people doing lunges, a lot of people doing burpees, for example, which are complex movements and worry me. Because I was saying to Jamie about online tutorials and things. You see a lot of them. Now, when you look at some of the online tutorials about people doing weightlifting, Olympic lifting, they may be talking about certain gymnastic things. There are some phenomenal tutorials. Information abundant and really good, really quite accurate. But as soon as you move into the market of, everybody, this is what we should be doing through the coronavirus. Watch me, I'm a fitness instructor, and they're horrendous videos. I mean, absolute shocking is the best way to describe them. So in understanding mechanics before you just throw somebody into, let's say, doing a burpee would be important. And one of the ways, of course, you can cheat the ability to prevent somebody going valgus or collapse their foot arch in, for example, when they're jumping and landing, is put your feet together. And you see it a lot in skiing nowadays, do you not? Quite close stances in some of the skiing. Yeah, almost thighs and adducted together. And in one sense, that's creating some strength. It's much more difficult to control the stance as it gets wider, like you mentioned with Don in his short turn there. Putting his feet together was a simple way of getting more sensation, if you like, and control.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the further the platform goes apart, the more it's going to create that extension within the joints, and obviously bring it underneath your body, the more it's going to create flexion. And just focusing on it all the time, by focusing on that narrow, it's going to build up, that narrow stance is going to build up an awareness of it, proprioception awareness of where your feet are underneath your body and what's going on a little bit more in the feet, because we're always trying to ski from the feet first. Absolutely.
So when we look at the skiers, we see, whichever one it was, we were looking at Don at first. And we can now see,
this is Jim,
as we go back and look at the other skiers, again, Jim in his 50s, we can see similar issues. And
so Jim's a regular, Jack the lad, loves, I wouldn't say 1 pint, loves a fair few pints if he's listening, Jim. You know who you are. So, he's not really done any sport coming into this course at all. No prep, really.
And remember his ankles, immobile. The profusion. There was, when we looked at his feet, they were white. Absolutely like a corpse.
Yeah, like a dead man's foot. But you can see, he's bringing in, quite a lot of dynamics into the
exactly.
Into the turn.
And again, as what we see in older people is the passion then. Because immediately he started every single night. He was flossing. He was trying to improve his arches. He had flat feet. He was trying to get, even if as I said to him, if you can just get a couple of degrees more movement down here, you will notice a difference. It's nothing to do with your skiing on the hill. It's to do with what you're doing at home.
Yeah, and I think as well, it was aiding blood flow, which is, again, it's giving more sensation. We're trying to work with the feet and skiing first, and I think that's what it also allowed him to tune much more into his feet. He became his proprioception awareness, his kinesthetic awareness of his feet just heightened so much as well.
Yeah, so in this picture here of his turn, you can see how he's got ski splay, and they're about to splay out in the turn. He's not really on the outside ski. He's going to end up way too far forward at this point in the turn. And this thing with being way too far forward, and I on our next video, we'll pull out maybe 50 videos and just play them through one after the other. You will see the same thing constantly. However, what is interesting on even on this small sequence of videos where we watch all the skiers doing the same, as soon as we go to the young racer chick, she's bang on at her middle position, and she knows how to use the fore and aft of the ski. Whereas here again,
also when you look at Techie, this is Marika, a Dutch girl from the Netherlands. Also a good, relatively very comfortable short turns. Rotation of the hip and everything like that. But much more. Her preferred turn was always a short. Brought in the long, and she continued to struggle, but she did get a lot better through time. But like you say, with Techie
here,
if you watch Techie, I think you just see it's an earlier finish in the turn, and she just allows the ski to squirt forward, and allow that energy to travel more clearly from one turn to the next turn. And she allows a center of mass to move back, or a weight to move to the heel.
See, a lot of people will look at that and go, here is somebody sitting back, and we'll explain this on the next video, but this is a very good Argentinian racer. Very good. Yeah. And immediately you could see the difference. And, when you look at Jamie ski, myself ski, you'll see these similar positions as well.
And yeah, it's for me, it's not sitting back. She's using the tail of the ski to allow the platform to travel away from her. So then she has the ability to take her mass further inside when it comes into the next turn.
But equally, when we look at then Don, so we'll see Don do his turns as well, remembering, a fairly experienced skier, and Gerhard, fairly experienced skier, but into his 70s now. We can see the difference between Jim and Gerhard, for example. But the first thing we need to address is he's keen to get into an alpine basic position because he's PSIA, and I'm sure he's going to be disciplined and thinking he's probably done 1,000 drills of trying to get people to force themselves over the outside ski, which can be a bit of an issue. At this point in the turn, we see now, same thing, moving too far forward in the turn. And this is going to be one of the things we want to tackle next, combined with the importance of the mobility issue as well.
Yeah, and I think, Paul keeps on saying the too far forward is, it's all a progression. Like they have to go, we would have went through these same steps when we were, learning to ski earlier on, as we still are learning to ski, you're constantly chasing the perfect turn. It's just a progression. It's never ending. You're constantly trying to get better. And they're just at that point of on these videos, they're at that point where, and then, okay, we've got something going on. We've got grip maybe. Okay, now we need to somehow fix the fact that you're a little bit too forward coming at the new turn. Or you're too forward at the end of the old turn. Whichever way you look at it. And
one of the things that is definitely helpful for these people then is in SIA, normally these sites are all locked that we have, but we're opening them up for you lot. You can find even on our Vimeo mobility strength and conditioning site, there's already 30 videos up there that may be of interest to people who want to look at their ankle calf, want to look at how to do a squat properly or a deadlift, and how to do them scaled in the event that you can't lift as much weight or get as much depth in the squat or deadlift. And also one of the interesting things is mobility of leg drills, trying to get somebody to understand that it's quite safe for their knee to have a certain element of rotational angulation. And also start to get people to address their feet more and more, that they're used to feeling how they are stood up in their day-to-day life, how they should be probably more without socks, without shoes, moving around the house, for example, could be just a simple way. I know, and Jamie knows, normally when I work in a standing desk and have done for years, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You can have a normal table and put some boxes on, and all of a sudden you've got a standing table. Things like that will make a big difference, I think. Obviously, as I said previous in videos, at the older age, your fast twitch 2 fibers are, you're losing them. You can't stop that. But what you can do is as much plyometrics as you can, jumping unilateral style training as you can, to slow down that journey to decrepitude.
I just think the more you do, the more it's going to benefit you. Every sport works together. They all work in unison. So whatever sport you're playing, it's going to help your skiing, your boarding.
Yeah, well, with that in mind, I think we'll leave it at that for part 1 of this, because it's going to get pretty lengthy. We will see you next time, and hope that you will have a look through some of our Vimeo stuff. And obviously, we will pick up if you've got anything specific you'd like us to look at. comments below, and we'll see what we can do.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao
Bye
for now.